whole thing.
Washington still ranked 8th in the country. Is that too low? Let's talk about it right here on Locked On Huskies.
You are Locked On Huskies, your daily podcast on the Washington Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back to another Monday edition of Locked On Huskies. I'm Rome Tomashoff. That right there, that is Lars Hanson. We write for Inside the Huskies of Fan Nation and Sports Illustrated. You can check out all our written work at si.com/college/Washington. Today, we are going to be breaking down everything that happened on Saturday against Michigan State. And, you know, with the way that Michael Penix just won Walter Camp Offensive Player of the Week, and just a whole bunch of other things that were just so fun to watch about that game. This should be another really fun show, like we always give you right here on Locked On Huskies. Real quickly, though, this episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 to get 200 bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. Lars Hanson, great to have you here as always. How was the trip back?
It was eventful. I mean, you know what? I didn't miss about this area is the drivers. The Midwest drivers, they know how to floor it, doing 95 down, 80, 94 west. Also, this is a completely random sidebar here, but have you ever noticed there's certain states that don't have if they have like an Interstate 69 or any like mile marker 69, they take it out, because in the state of Washington they do that. There's a Interstate 69 going between East Lansing and all that they have all those signs still up. So that was a nice touch for me. No pun intended there. But yes, it was a good trip. It was a good trip. Great game, great people. And then I landed back in SeaTac.
And now you're exhausted. Got to get back to work. I'm sure your fantasy teams are getting crushed. Mine aren't at the moment as we record this on a Sunday afternoon. But we need to get into some actual discussions about football here. The Huskies are still ranked 8th in the AP poll, which just came out a couple of hours ago. Is that too low?
I mean, everyone's going to say that this is the number one team in the country, right? Especially if you're a Washington fan, you want to think that. I just don't know. I think at this point, it's safe to say they're probably top 5, maybe 5 or 4. I wouldn't put them in that 3, 2, or 1 category yet,
right? Because
I still think it's really going to be the litmus test. And once you get to the Oregon game and you beat Oregon, then you become the number 1 team or number 2 team in the country. I think that'll kind of easily vault them up. And that's also where you have staying power, because you don't want to go 5, 4, 6. You don't want to keep bouncing, right? Even if you're winning, there's going to be a lot of fluctuation in the voting. So I don't think it's necessarily bad that they stood pat, because also, as we're going to talk about later, was it really a Big Ten team that they faced yesterday?
Technically, yes. Technically, yes. We're not going to go there.
I'm just saying that was raw. Something else.
But one thing that I wanted to hit on is I agree. They should be ranked somewhere in 4, 5, 6 range, because what we saw on Saturday from a lot of the top teams around college football was they struggled with inferior opponents. Georgia struggled, Michigan struggled, Texas struggled, Florida State, Penn State. Like the list goes on and on and on. Texas moved up to number 3. Like what? Like I get Florida State kind of still being at 4. They barely hung on against Boston College. Now Jordan Travis is hurt. Like the fact that Washington just took their foot off the gas halfway through the third quarter, put up 713 total yards of offense, allowed 7 points, and really those 7 points were kind of a fluke on just a couple of weird plays back to back. Like, no, just stop. Like, come on.
I mean, that's the one thing that we touched on this a couple of weeks ago. I remember talking about the perception, right? When we were talking about Michael Penix for the Heisman, it's the perception of it. No matter how good Washington will be, that Texas brand, if they're undefeated, and especially after you beat Alabama, no matter how bad Alabama is,
Alabama was bad.
And in comparison, again, in the context of how good Alabama usually is, right? We're not saying that they're trash, right? But comparatively so, they don't have a quarterback and they don't have an offensive coordinator. Gee, I wonder why they don't have the latter. But with that being said, I think that Texas right now, it's kind of like had Washington played Oregon earlier and beaten them, then they probably would move up, right? So I think it's more semantics. It's not necessarily because Texas easily could still lose, right? I don't necessarily see that for Washington as easily. I mean, you have 2 games which you could possibly lose: Oregon and USC.
I want to throw Oregon State in there since that is my preseason prediction, because they still look pretty good. But
I do want to add really quick,
Please.
+3 against Oregon State. I know it's in the Palouse, but that's a really surprising line. Like I saw that on FanDuel this morning. I mean, I hit that +3 like there's no tomorrow, just because like it's a safe bet.
But no, it's something where, just for me personally, when I look at some of these other teams around the country, I see question marks. And yes, and this is coming from two people who cover the Washington Huskies. Are there questions about the Huskies? Absolutely. We are going to touch on some of them in the next segment. But when you look at what this team's offense is week in and week out, there's no better offense in the country. And I don't understand why they aren't ranked above, just some of these other teams. Like, I get if you want to move USC up, even though they were on their bye, like I understand that, but Penn State, Ohio State struggled. Like they're just, and Kyle McCord settling in. He had a good day yesterday, but I don't understand it. And you kind of look at, so like when the complete AP poll like votes come out, like Mike Varell, our friend of the pod, had UW at number 5. I think that's very fair. And then there are some people who just don't seem to give this team credit. Like, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. The guy who votes for Wisconsin, the Wisconsin Journal.
I knew you were going there.
He consistently puts him at like 14, 15, 16. Like, dude, just say you don't watch the game. Just say that. Like, even if you look at the box score, it's not hard to just say, yeah, I didn't even give him the time of day. Like, that's terrible.
Yeah, but that, again, part of that, I wonder how much of that is perception and how much of that is ignorance, right?
That's true.
There's probably a combination of both. And again, we can all be ignorant. It's fine. But, when you're an AP voter, you can't have that much ignorance, right?
Right.
Put them at 9, put them at 10. Outside the top 10, even with an average defense for Washington, right? They were good yesterday, right? But let's just say that they're middle of the pack, right? 5 or 6 in the pack.
Sure.
This is still, again, I know by the numbers, Colorado's up there, and there's a couple others that are maybe hanging around.
Awful last night. I don't even want to get started on Colorado.
But I'm just saying yardage. I mean, Shedeur Sanders and
sure.
Michael Penix are the top 2 graded on PFF. They're the top 2 in the country. At this point, by the end of October, that gap will be a lot wider for Michael Penix above Shedeur Sanders. So I think it's kind of, this is the frustrating part for Washington, right? Because you know how good we are. You know how good the team is. There's still, as you said, questions. I still want to see a little bit more from the pass. I mean, they did good, right? They did good. Yeah. But you also want to see more from the running backs. I mean, we'll talk about it later, I'm sure. But the fact that you have a freshman running back who was suspended over a month ago as your leading rusher at a big non-conference game, to me, that's just a little. I have a few questions.
I have some thoughts on that, but we can talk about that when we get there.
But I think that's kind of why it's not for a lack of Penix in the offense. I mean, you could have the greatest offense, but if you have, by perception, a terrible defense, you're not going to get into the top 5. So I think that's kind of why they're in the top 10, but they're hanging just out of the top 5. I don't agree with it, but I think that's what the perception is.
And see, like the issue that I take here is that we saw Bill Connolly at CBS put them at 1. And like, do I think that they're the number 1 team in the country? No, absolutely not. But like, it's just showing that the perception is there and that there are people who are taking notice. And the fact that the AP just says, oh yeah, no, this team just blew out a Big Ten school. I don't care how bad they are, because like, we get it. Yeah, they're terrible, but I don't care how bad they are. They still blew them out in their house. That's not easy. No matter the task. Like, we saw Ohio State struggle against Indiana in week 1. Like, it's still tough to do.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you saw Harlan Bennett, Michigan State's acting head coach's reaction in his post-game press conference. I believe it was the first question he was asked was Washington put up 713 yards of total offense, the most by far that Michigan State's ever given up in a single game. As the reporter finished the sentence, he's like, "Wow." Now he said more after that, but he's like, "Wow." And it was one of those where it's like, again, yes, it's like this offense is that good, but there are still some questions, and I think that's kind of what's holding them back. It's almost like a parachute, right? You can either go fast or you can kind of just coast into it, and then when you hit the ground, you're hitting the ground right on the bullseye.
Right. So, and I like that point a lot. And I think that just that's what this offense does to people. It's wild just to see what they are able to do, and it's just I really don't know if I've ever seen anything like that. But real quickly here, I do have to remind everybody that this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. There are a lot of times in life where I felt like somebody who is, I've lost my way a little bit. I've gone through a couple career changes on my way to being a full-time media member, and something that really helped me was therapy and just having somebody else to talk to. It's just something that I truly just highly recommend to anybody who wants to just have something that they need to get off their chest or just need somebody to talk to on just any kind of basis. So if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire and you can get matched with a licensed therapist, and you're able to switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Get a break from your thoughts with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedoncollege today to get $10 off your 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedoncollege. All right, this is fun. We kind of got into this a little bit before the show started. And for all our non-YouTube listeners, make sure you subscribe to us on YouTube. But for all of our audio listens out there, we appreciate you just as much. Was the question that we posed here, was it good defense from Washington or was it bad offense from Michigan State?
I'm going to answer that question with a question as I pull up the Michigan State stat book here.
Ooh.
Mason Wheeler. Recognize that name? Mason Wheeler.
Yeah,
had more receptions and more yards than Antonio Gates Jr. And actually more than Noah Carter in terms of yardage too, receiving yards. So again, now I know Noah Carter is a running back, but again, so we came into this game, right? I had the story on Inside the Huskies where stop the run, stop the pass rush. They did both of those fantastically.
Right.
That said, it was easier to stop a one-dimensional team, which is honestly what Washington is going to face this coming weekend against Cal. Sure. Is you have two really good. I mean, Noah Carter is a really good running back. I think he actually is better than Nathan Carter. Sorry, but what did I say? Noah Carter? Yeah, Nate Carter. Sorry, my bad. Sorry.
We did that all week, and we do apologize because we kept saying instead of Noah Kim too, where the names it's the ends in the backfield where it's like that same first letter gets you sometimes.
But Carter is a very good running back, so I do.
He's excellent.
It's actually a good testament to Washington's run defense. And then, man, we had this conversation a few weeks ago. Put some respect on Caden Hauser's name. The dude should be starting in Michigan State right now. Like, no disrespect to Noah Kim, but if your offense is going to be that dog poor, trying to be nice here, you just got to let Caden cook. Just let him cook. I mean, those receivers, they're talented enough to get better separations. Because here's the thing, Noah missed on a lot of throws. I mean, Jabbar had good coverage.
He was not.
Vincent Nunley was good when he came up, and if he actually had over 50 plays, over 50 snaps in the game. So I think
he was super impressive in terms of his PFF grade.
Yep. And also, honestly, I thought he made a better impact in the run defense in terms of when
awesome,
right. And so he was always there. There was no missed tackles, things like that. But man, Noah couldn't hit the broadside of a barn if he was standing right in front of it. Like, it was incredible. It reminded me, and this is not a knock on Dylan Morris because I saw a tweet.
John Donovan coached. I see where you're going there.
Because it's not the quarterback. Because I think, and again, much like against Michigan State, the interception that Dylan threw was on Tayshaun Lyons. Not, I mean, Dylan hit him right in the money spot. Like that's incredible.
That should have been a touchdown.
So it's not on the quarterback. It's on the coaching at that point. And man,
So since I want to go the other way with this. Because yes, there was definitely a lot of bad offense played by the Spartans on Saturday. But I think that a lot of that needs to just kind of end up being credited to the Washington defense. Jabbar Muhammad played excellent. Vince Nunley, as we just said, was fantastic. Like, he's somebody who we just kind of saw him like time and time again, like running with the second team. He got some first team reps every now and again during fall camp, but he just never really seemed to make an impact. And then he got the start with the injuries that were going on. And now it's, there's some depth at safety. Vince Nunley looks real good. So that's super promising to see from that. And Jabbar Muhammad, somebody we love to talk about on this year program, who is just excellent every time he steps on the field. And I think that, we just kind of look at what Washington's defense did and what the game plan was. So yes, a lot of credit does need to go to the coaching staff, but what the game plan was and how solidly they executed that game plan. The front seven, yeah, they brought down Vince Nunley. I remember there was somebody in the YouTube comments asking us all week long, are they going to bring down a safety and run support? I was like, it kind of feels like they have to. They did. And while we probably won't see that every single week, we probably will this week against Cal, but that's something we'll talk about later in the week. That's something where the coaching staff put a great game plan out there, and then it was executed to perfection, which is something that just I keep going back to the same well, I feel like, in terms of the point that I'm trying to make, but the talent was there, and it was just, yeah, this is what we want to see. Just hold your gaps, just maintain your assignment. That's it. I'm going to quote Bill Belichick here because, go Pats, do your job. That's it. That's all that needed to be done and it's going to be very different when Oregon comes to town, when they have to go to USC. Like, yeah, but that's something where if you're just, again, able to do your job and force some of those bad throws, great. Like that Mish Powell interception. That was a forced bad throw. Like the way Zion was able to get off the edge. Braylon Trice was really, really good yesterday. I was really impressed with him, but it's the same thing that we talked about the first couple of weeks, where he was double teamed, where there were triple teams, where everyone was getting a shot in on Braylon Trice, and people are probably going to start asking the question, well, why doesn't he have any sacks? Just watch the film, man. He's there every play. He's just getting so much attention.
Right. I was going to say, because a couple of weeks ago, I said, where was Zion? And then he gets a week off and then shows up with 2 sacks. Braylon, I don't have that question because you can see it's the not finishing. But again, when you're double and triple teaming and getting chipped off the edge and you have to go further and further out and you're still disrupting the pass, that's a sack in my book. I mean, I know it's not an actual sack, but it's just as good as a sack.
Yeah.
And so I think, I don't have that issue with Braylon where yes, he doesn't have any sacks on the season, but they're not struggling in that department because of it. And it's not because of him why they didn't have a pass rush to begin with, or why he was struggling to begin with, I should say. He was still getting right there. They just weren't able to hit him. Or they were hitting him as the ball was getting released. So it's not that Braylon can't. I mean, there's going to be a game where Braylon has like 3 or 4 sacks. We just know that's coming. It just feels like there's going to be one offense that he just decides, you know what? I'm going to wreck you guys. I'm going to find a way. Yeah, exactly.
He's going to have 7 sacks against Stanford.
Exactly. It's just one. I mean, maybe not 7, but yes, I agree with your premise. Where it's 7. Like where it's. I mean, all right, that's a bold prediction. Mark that one.
I love making bold predictions on this show.
I know. Well, again, it was just funny where I said Javon Parker would have 2 sacks. Zion ends up getting the 2 sacks, but Javon Parker is the highest graded defender on PFF. So there's a little. I did
not see that.
So there was, but again, when you look at the grade, it wasn't the offensive grades. Let's just put it that way. It wasn't bad. Wasn't bad.
Sure.
But also was not where you need the defense to be. Now again, as we go back to the first thing, when you have such an offense that can just cook and make, 5-star, filet mignons out of nothing, it's like, I mean, not nothing, but on the drop of a dime, I mean, man, Penix's throw from the end zone, I watched that about 20 times after I got back to the air. Yeah, it's like, geez. If you had the defensive equivalent of that, where you're, I mean, they almost did, where Powell gets the interception and they turn it into 7.
The equivalent of that is the 2016 death row defense. That's the defensive equivalent of that. And
exactly.
That is one of just my favorite teams to watch of all time in any sport, but that's not coming back. So, and
at least not this year. At least not this year. Maybe in the future, but not this year.
I did see somebody. Somebody in the comments on one of our pages said something like DeBoer doesn't care about defense. That's not it at all. That's missing the point by a lot. It's we as people who cover the Huskies, as people who watch the Huskies every single day, fans, everyone was so spoiled by the best defensive coordinator and talent evaluators in the nation. This defense that we're watching right now has at least 1 first-round pick on it, and Braylon Trice. There are a lot of NFL caliber players on this defense. This is just an average college football defense. That's all this is. Like this isn't some this is an atrocity. No, this is just what an average college football defense looks like, which is fine. And if you can be an average defense and step up and do your job and make plays at the right time, that's why this team is in the top 10. Like that, and this because we saw what a good defense plus an average offense gets you. 2017, 2018, where you can go to the New Year's 6, but that was a top 5 defense in the country. We saw what a top 5 defense plus a top 5 offense gets you in 2016 when they made the college football playoff. And that's something where I don't know if I'm kind of negating my own point when I say this, but it's something where the top 5 offense is really what's going to take you places. And then the defense, and that's just kind of the way football has gone. Look at the NFL for the most part. Look at just kind of where we are in the world of college football. The offense is going to get you where you need to go. The defense is still what's going to step up at key times. Because if you can get a stop by just doing your job and just doing enough, this offense can take you all the way, really.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's sort of like when you have that ace in the hole with Michael Penix and a quintuplet of receivers and Dylan Johnson. And I mean, Dylan Johnson, I mean, we'll talk about this in the next segment, but man, when he's healthy, I think he's about 95%. I know I said that last week too. I still don't think he's all the way there, but he's almost there. He's right there. Give him, I mean, again, to your point, you don't take the foot off the gas. That's a 70 burger easily.
Right. And, you talked about Michael Penix. It's now time for your game changer of the week, brought to you by Athletic Brewing Company. Much like Michael Penix, who just destroyed the Michigan State Spartans for the 700th time in his career, is what it feels like. Athletic Brewing has completely changed the non-alcoholic beer game. They make non-alcoholic beers that actually taste good. They brew over 50 styles of craft non-alcoholic beer, including IPAs, Goldens, Sours, and more. They're fit for all times, so you can drink them anytime, anywhere, and make any activity even more enjoyable, like watching a big game or your kids' game, tackling work or working out, anything really. And one of the best parts about it is that there are no hangovers ever. You can find Athletic Brewing Company's non-alcoholic brews at a store near you or buy online at athleticbrewingcompany.com. First-time customers can use code LOCKEDON to get 15% off your first order. That's code LOCKEDON at checkout, 15% off at athleticbrewingcompany.com. At athleticbrewing.com. Near beer, exclusions and conditions apply. Athletic Brewing Company, fit for all times. Okay, something I want to talk about Tybo Rogers here right off the top, because that was something you brought up in the first segment. So I'd like for you to expand on that point where you said that there was a true freshman who led this team in rushing, and you seem to have some extra thoughts, and I wanted to make sure that we saved them for this segment.
Yeah, I mean, because here's the thing, as I was driving back 3.5 hours, actually made it 3 hours by doing about 85 between East Lansing and Chicago in the dead of night, which is why I was able to do that, by the way. Do not recommend that during the day.
Don't recommend that at any time of day, really, but
fair. But well, I mean, casually.
Unless you're in Montana with those 80-mile-an-hour speed limits.
Oh my God, that I love that state, man. But going back to the question that I had with Ryan Gerber about the depth at running back and coming out of fall camp after Cam Davis got hurt. He was still about a week before the season. He was like, I don't even know if we've had 2 guys emerge. And I think slowly but surely this room has kind of started to filter itself out. We had 4 running backs, and Sam Adams also got to play in the game. He didn't get a carry, but he was in the game. He didn't factor in the game, but he was in the game. So he's in that rotation as well. And Richard Newton was also able to get a decent, 4 carries for 29 yards. I mean,
he looked good.
He was a guy who we weren't writing him off, but it was almost like I would expect Sam to get those carries before
He's
Richard.
Kind of the forgotten guy at this point.
Exactly. But he showed, hey, I can still do this in a pinch if you really, really need it. And that just speaks to the depth at running back. But the fact that Tybo had 15 carries for 75 yards, and here's the catch, a net loss of 1 yard. So it wasn't like he was a freshman with a chicken with his head cut off, running around, kind of just doing everything. There's a reason why this staff was so hard on him.
He looked really good.
Because they know what they got in him. And man, did he show it.
So you said that you were worried, or you seem to have some extra thoughts about the fact that a true freshman led this team in rushing. I really want you to expand on that.
So I think it's part of it. I mean, it's not. I don't want to say it's a concern, because I would think there's 2 sides of that coin, right? Do you want to get Dylan Johnson and Will Nixon more reps, and maybe even Richard Newton more reps, just to kind of get those experienced guys and get Dylan into the flow of the game, but potentially risk an injury to a key player again, who you also didn't have the week against Tulsa. So right. You're getting him back this week. You don't want to continue to pile that on. And do you really need him to go for 120 and a couple of touchdowns? No. That said, he also did factor just as much in the passing game. And I'll be honest, I love Michael Penix. He missed him a couple of times on the wide open flat. He didn't even look at it.
And there was also that terrible holding call on Jalen McMillan that should have been a 27-yard touchdown for Dylan Johnson. And
that was an actual crime, but then somebody pointed out to me on Twitter that it's a Pac-12 refs crew. So I'm like, okay, whatever.
I didn't see that. That does.
And to be fair, I don't know if it was. So that
it definitely looked like it because it is a non-conference game, so it shouldn't have been one from either conference.
But I mean, I guess when a dying conference and two teams merging into the same conference, I guess the rules just go out the window. But back to your question, I think it's not concerning because it wasn't forced. It wasn't. I mean, like you said it in the first segment, they took their foot off the gas. I mean, Dylan Morris came into the game with like 10 minutes left in the third quarter. Landon Hatchett was the starting center at halftime or coming out of halftime. He didn't. Parker went back in for a couple more snaps, and then Landon fully took over midway through the third.
So. That's kind of where I wanted to go with this was because you were like, oh, the quote I remember, and I don't remember exactly what it was from the first segment, even though it was 20 minutes ago. You said something like, oh, do you really want a true freshman leading your team in rushing? And I think that it doesn't only speak to what we saw from Tybo on the field, which was really, really impressive, and what the coaching staff thinks of him. But we also have to remember that it was 38-0 at that point. So it was my thought on the matter was they don't really need to throw the ball anymore. They don't. Yeah, you don't really want to get Dylan Johnson hurt. So you're not going to throw him back out there. It's kind of same thing with Will Nixon and Tybo. He suited up last week against Tulsa. Didn't suit up against Boise State in the opener. I don't remember seeing him out there. So it was just kind of okay. Let's see what we have in this guy. And also, the score is what it is. We're really and as much as they really did take their foot off the gas, the only thing they wanted to do was try to run the ball effectively. That's really what it seemed like the game plan was for the entirety of the second half. So why not use one of his 4 games, even though there's been speculation for a while now that Tybo's one of the guys that might not redshirt, and he did show us why. But it's also because just to that original point of him leading the team in rushing, I don't think it matters because the game was so out of hand, and it's not like we saw him in the first half at all. It's not like when the game was actually somewhat within a reach, Tybo was anywhere near the field.
Right. That's kind of why, in a way, it wasn't a slight to Tybo or the room in general. It's like that's why I posed the question: do you want a freshman doing it? So it's like, well, you don't want him doing it, but if he can do it, right? I think that's kind of where the discussion lies, right? Because you're not going to have him doing this every game. I mean, maybe he plays more than 5 games, but I think next week against Cal, I think it's going to be more Dylan Johnson and Will Nixon, and then Sam Adams and maybe Richard Newton sort of thing. I mean, Richard Newton won the game against Cal last year, so I think they might want to space it out a little bit more. But I think to our point, Tybo is going to give him every reason. I changed it up a little bit there.
I like it.
To our point, I think Tybo is going to give him every chance to not play him. I mean, I know double negative there, but I think he's gonna make it hard to keep him off the field, especially in the second half of games when you have the game in hand. He's not going to be a guy that comes in the second quarter for Will Nixon unless Nixon's hurt or unless somebody else is hurt, sort of thing. I think he's still kind of down that ladder a little bit, but he's climbing up pretty quick.
I like that a lot, and I kind of want to switch gears here a little bit because that was I don't know how many other podcasts there are out there that are spending 5 minutes on a true freshman running back that didn't play in the first half of a game, which is credit to us. I mean, hey, we go to extreme lengths to make sure that all the everydayers out there get the very best content out there. And this is also just I wanted a minute here to push my Thaddeus Dixon agenda, which is something that I will continue to push. Because he was impressive, and yes, he did get burned a couple of times. There were a couple of plays where, it's but that's something that I feel like we expect from not only what the scheme is, which is this very aggressive man-to-man corner type of play, which I think is really fun, and I think if it works, it's so effective because you can commit so many other bodies to run support and to other things that need to be done. So when Thaddeus Dixon makes a couple of PBUs and just has a really, really effective game like he did with Devon Banks out and Elijah Jackson, who didn't need to play a whole ton in the second half, just like basically every single starter, I liked what I saw from him. And I think that as a guy who was is a junior college transfer, I think that there's nowhere to go for him but up.
Well, the one thing that I put this out on Twitter, I'm not sure if you saw it, but I think you did, but at one point in the second quarter, Jabbar Muhammad was on the sideline in helmet, not injured, not taken out for any reason, solely for the fact that they could test Elijah and Thaddeus. And I think that they both, I think, played well. That Elijah's phantom holding call was on par for the officiating for the game. But, you know, when people see like, oh, hey, he got another flag, oh, he can't do it. I think it's like he's kind of getting the raw end of the stick. But, you know, Thaddeus is also holding it down. So I think the one thing I like about both of them is their mentality. They refuse to quit. You're never going to see it. Elijah's smart enough to know, hey, I'd rather hold a guy and get that penalty than give up a touchdown easily. And that's the right call about that. That's the right call. The coach will tell you that. I'll give
10 yards or a touchdown.
That's an easy choice. So I think fans need to kind of remember that when evaluating some of their play.
Right. And just real quickly here, 15 seconds. One last player who just kind of stood out to you in one way or another. Who do you got?
I'm gonna steal yours, Landon Hatchett. You know, it's our favorite guy. The reason why was because he didn't start, but he played at left guard before center.
Yep.
You had Geary and Hatchett at right. Geary and Hatchett at right guard and Landon Hatchett at left guard with Parker in the middle. That blew my mind.
So that's a good look at offensive line too, because Gearin was impressive. Landon was awesome, and I actually did want to shout out Parker Brailsford because this is and so thank you for taking Landon Hatchett because that is where I was going to go, but I do want to shout out Parker Brailsford because man, that kid has just been so insanely impressive through 3 games. That's a redshirt freshman who played 2 games at right guard. And then, Mateo Mele might be out for a while. I'm sure you'll probably know more as you listen to this podcast, depending on when you listen to it on Mondays. But that's, wow. I think that's really all you can say about just the performance that Parker had starting at center. And when you look at that, that's the center of the future right there, because no matter what, this is Mateo Mele's last year of eligibility.
That's a better version of Nick Harris. And that is no disrespect to Nick Harris, who came in similar path, right guard, moved around a bunch, played early, but Parker is going to be that much better.
I love Nick Harris. He's one of my favorite players from those teams, but Parker just is so much stronger than Nick Harris ever was. Truly. It's unbelievable.
And he also has the mentality to where he just seems like a 4th-year veteran or 3rd-year veteran as a redshirt freshman. It's like he looks like the combination of Corey Luciano and Mateo Mele mentally with the age of a redshirt freshman. It seems insane.
I was real quickly here as we wrap up. I was talking to somebody on Friday who when there was some speculation that Mele might miss the game, they were saying, "Oh man, losing your center is such a big blow." And I said, "You don't understand how much confidence the staff has in Parker Brailsford. And if this staff, especially if Ryan Grubb has confidence in you, doesn't matter what year you are, that's something I'd take to the bank." Lars, as always, appreciate you being here. We appreciate all the everydayers who we really want to encourage to make sure you like, comment, subscribe. Just let us know your thoughts on Michigan State, on just this team, on basically anything and everything. We want to hear it. Tweet at us at @Tomashoff34, at Lars Hanson, and at LOCKEDON Huskies. Follow us all over the place. And again, make sure you subscribe wherever you get this podcast: YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon Music. We're there. Please let us know your thoughts. Leave us a 5-star review, and we will talk to you on Tuesday.